Let's talk about Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. I know we talked about him last week, but there's something else I wanted to bring up about this guy because one of the things I have found kind of amusing about Mike Johnson is watching the reactions to him from mainstream news outlets. It's kind of been interesting watching like CNN, MSNBC, and all them saying, this guy thinks Noah's Ark is real. And it's like, yeah, buddy, we've been talking about this for decades on this side of the aisle. Where have you all been? And it's fun reading articles where they're like, this guy is a fan of someone named David Barton. It's like, yeah, he's a Christian liar who specializes in lies about the founding fathers. We know that. But again, I appreciate that a lot of places are pointing out his Christian nationalism, and that's important. I hope more people find out about it. But one of the lesser known areas of his life that is getting some attention, but I think it's news to people, even those of us who are familiar with white evangelical circles, is the fact that he has a special marriage. Check out this article. This is from Mother Jones. The most powerful man in the House doesn't like divorce. Speaker Mike Johnson has been talking about it for decades, and now he's got a larger audience. So what does that mean? That the most powerful man in the House doesn't like divorce? That seems like a typical Christian thing, right? They don't like it. Well, Mike Johnson and his wife Kelly Johnson have something called a covenant marriage. And I was not that familiar with it before last week, before I started going down this rabbit hole here. But holy hell, this thing is wild. And basically, he has a special kind of marriage contract that is clearly stronger than all the ones all of you have signed. He's better than you. I hope you know that. And the reason he thinks all this, the reason he thinks his marriage is better than yours, is it goes back to like the late 90s, mid to late 90s. This is when, if you think about the culture wars at the time, you had more people getting divorced, and that was scary for a lot of people. You had people talking about gay marriage, and that was scary for a lot of conservatives. And they really wanted to push this idea that we got to have straight married couples stay together for the sake of the children. Divorce is never an option. And so some Christians pushed for a thing called covenant marriage. And in Louisiana, which is where Mike Johnson is from, and there were other conservative Christians in the legislature, they actually passed a law giving people this option. Check this out. This is the law in Louisiana about covenant marriage. A covenant marriage is a marriage entered into by one male and one female who understand and agree that the marriage between them is a lifelong relationship. I mean, okay, fine, but isn't that just what marriage is? Everyone goes into it thinking it's a lifelong partnership. But then look at this part at the end here. A covenant marriage may be terminated by divorce only upon one of the exclusive grounds enumerated in another law. A covenant marriage agreement may not be dissolved, rescinded, or otherwise terminated by the mutual consent of the spouses. And I know that's a little bit of legalese there, but what that means is if two people say, you know what, we are not happy together, we don't love each other anymore, yeah, we're just not in love anymore. In every state in the country right now, you can just get divorced. That's what no fault divorce is. You can just say, I want out. And then you're allowed to leave. And maybe there's some lawyers involved when it comes to how do you separate your stuff? How do you deal with the kids? That's a separate issue. But no one's stopping you from getting divorced. A covenant marriage, if you sign that contract, says, oh, you don't love each other anymore? So what? You're stuck. That's what you signed on to when you were 16 and Christian and got married or however old they were. So here's the thing. Under what grounds can you get divorced under a covenant marriage? That's the question, right? And so according to an article, this is from the Washington Post in 1997, when this Louisiana law was passed. Here's what it says. In the event their marriage should someday sour, only the most egregious betrayal, adultery, abuse, abandonment, or a lengthy separation, that's all that ends the marriage. That's it. Like, I get why some of that would qualify, but again, this means if you're just not happy, if you're not in love, you're stuck in the marriage. And that's crazy. So the Johnsons, Mike Johnson, Kelly Johnson, they were married in 1999. They were among like the most famous, most prominent people to get hitched under the covenant marriage contract. And they also became like its two poster children for the whole concept. And it made sense because Mike Johnson was a law student at the time and he helped draft the law. He worked with Tony Perkins, who's the leader of a Christian hate group, who was also a Louisiana legislator. He's the guy who got this thing passed. And at the same time, like when all this happened, one of the things they pointed out, this is from an article, this is from Slate. Check this out. Let me see if I can bring this up here. There we go. Johnson told the Associated Press he was trying to persuade all of his friends to convert their marriages. According to NOLA.com, the Johnsons became the poster couple for covenant marriage just a few months after the Associated Press article. Mike and Kelly were on Good Morning America talking to Diane Sawyer about being among the few such couples in the country. When Sawyer asked Kelly about her decision, Kelly, charming and smiling, made the idea seem romantic. Oh gosh, I would have to say, from a woman's perspective, I've been in some bad relationships before, and I just knew that when I met the man I was supposed to marry, that I wanted to know it was for a lifetime, she said. Later, she added, it's a big red flag for a woman if you decide you want the option of the covenant marriage and your mate says, no, I don't want to do that. Which, yeah, that could be a red flag. But also, if someone says, I want to get married to you, and your response is, well, do you? Let's make like a blood bond and make sure you can never leave me. That seems way scarier to me and totally not romantic at all. So that's a thing. By the way, you may have noticed this in that Slate article. The whole idea is Louisiana passes this law, and they're thinking all the other states are going to come on board because that's what they started. It's going to be such a popular idea, especially among red states, that everyone else will follow suit. That is not what happened. Arizona passed a similar law the next year in 1998. Arkansas passed it in 2001. And these laws basically give people the option of a covenant marriage. But basically, under 2% of married couples in those states have opted for a covenant marriage. No one's really doing this unless you're already basically a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. Because I think most couples are like, yeah, I'm fine with the normal marriage contract. I'm not sure why I'd want to like make it stronger. Like if you tell someone I do and I love you and I'm going through the wedding, I feel like that's all implied. There's nothing that can make it stronger. If you're doing a covenant marriage, you're saying, I don't trust you enough. I need paperwork. Otherwise, this union is not solid. And that's weird as well. So, like, here's the thing about covenant marriage. If it works for the Johnsons, all right, fine. None of my business. Same as the last story. But there is an obvious problem with this kind of heightened marriage contract because it assumes wrongly that other people go into their marriages with a foot already out the door. That's not how it works. Like most people take their marriage vows seriously, at least at first, right? They have every intention of staying together for life. And the fact that divorce is on the table as a legal option, it doesn't bother anybody because you don't think you're going to need it. Not on your wedding day, you don't. But obviously, many people realize some point down the road, you know what? I think I do need to take up that option. I do think I need to get divorced. And maybe it's because, again, maybe it's because they're not in love anymore. Maybe it's for much more serious reasons. But of course, some marriages end that way. And the problem with the covenant marriages is that those contracts now create a tougher obstacle for people looking to get out of really bad situations. Because the only thing that piece of paper does is it makes it harder for you to get out of a relationship that you really want to get out of. That's it. And that sounds horrible. Like, what if two people are no longer happy? What if they realize they're no longer compatible? Like, imagine how many evangelical purity culture couples get married at a very young age, and they've been abstinent this whole time. They get married so they could stop being abstinent. And what if they realize they have no sexual chemistry and they are not at all compatible in that sense? Then maybe you would want that option down the road to leave that relationship. Maybe you realize you're not emotionally compatible because you barely know each other. That sounds like a disaster, but they couldn't leave in a covenant marriage. What if they realize down the road they're just, sorry, this just fell here. What if they realize down the road that they're just not in love? They're different people. They barely know themselves. If you get married at like 18 or 19 or even younger, which is legal in a lot of states, you don't even know yourself. And so, of course, you're more likely to need to get divorced because who is this person you've now hitched yourself to for life? Here's another one. What if your beliefs about something really important change? What about your politics? If you married someone because you thought you shared the same values, and down the road you realize, you know what? I don't think I am a conservative anymore, or I'm not a liberal anymore. What if you start doubting your religious beliefs? How many times has that happened where you marry someone because you're both devout in your faith, and then down the road, one of you realizes, I don't think I believe in God anymore. You are now very different people, and maybe you need to go your own separate ways. Like, people change their minds, people grow older and change on a lot of issues. And if you regret your marriage, I hope there's a path out for you. And here's another one that's even more damning. What if there is abuse? What if there's emotional abuse, which I'm sure a lot of conservative Christians don't think qualifies? Or what if there's physical abuse, but it's just your word against his? And now you have to go to court to like prove there was domestic violence in play. That's asking a lot of people who shouldn't have to go through that. That Washington Post article I brought up earlier actually mentioned a very good rebuttal to all this. Let me show you this. That kind of encouragement from pastors, friends, relatives to have the covenant marriage could constitute a form of emotional blackmail, critics contend, in which a reluctant man or woman is pressured into a covenant marriage and later resents it. Like, yeah, if you want to get married to someone and they say, okay, but I need you to sign this paper, and they're like, I don't know about this. Yeah, it's going to screw things up a lot. So, of course, there's a lot of pressure to sign those pieces of paper. And like, just have any of you talked to the children of people who really needed to get divorced? Like, all those kids always say, I'm so much happier because my parents separated because they needed to, and they're now happy in their own separate lives. That's so much better than living in a home where two parents hate each other and don't want to be together. Like, that's not a good idea. Remaining in a bad marriage is bad for you, it's bad for your kids. It can lead to depression and PTSD or worse. Again, it's not that any of these people getting married are trying to take the exit ramp. It's that situations change. And when that happens, it's nice to know there's a legal way out of it, even though that's going to be a really hard thing to do. A covenant marriage might sound nice in theory. It's just a horrible idea in practice. And it's really dangerous in conservative Christian circles where purity culture norms pressure people to get married young before they know each other, before they know themselves. Yikes. I mean, if you're in a broken marriage, you should not have to wait for abuse or abandonment in order to move on. And you shouldn't have to air your personal laundry in a courtroom to justify wanting to get out. But this is the same thing conservative Christians do with abortion rights. They don't like when other people make choices they don't want to make themselves. And instead of just accepting that other people are different, they try to pass laws making it harder for other people to make choices they don't like. So I'm wondering, by pushing this covenant marriage contract, how many people, probably Christians, were trapped in a marriage they wanted to escape? Mike Johnson says his covenant marriage worked fine, and I'm quoting this, because his wife has stayed with me the whole time, which is what a kidnapper says. Like, that's not what you say when you're in a happy, healthy marriage. Like, yeah, we've been married for 50 years. Why? Well, she's here, isn't she? That's not a good answer. The implication, excuse me, the implication is that his wife might have left the marriage if they had a looser contract, but the paperwork kept her at home. That just seems messed up. And again, I don't care about his marriage. It's none of my business. Mike Pence has a weird marriage. I don't care about his marriage either. It's their life, it's their decision. But this is the reason I think this is important. If Republicans win a governing trifecta in 2024, if they win the Senate back, if they keep the House, if Donald Trump becomes president again, and Mike Johnson is still Speaker of the House, what is stopping him from trying to pass a nationwide version of a covenant marriage law like the one that's in Louisiana? Because Republicans love culture war issues and they love controlling other people's marriages. They want to they refuse to protect same-sex marriage like earlier this year. They oppose interracial marriage because we've heard some people talk about how that's a horrible idea. They want to allow child marriage in many states. So making it harder for people, straight people, to get divorced, that seems right up their alley. And the irony that Donald Trump, if he gets elected again, would be on his third marriage, I don't think that irony would dawn on any of them, and they certainly wouldn't care. And the thing is, look, it's not that anyone would be forced to sign a covenant marriage or a covenant contract, but the sort of people who might be pressured to sign it are probably the same people who one day are most in need of a way to break free. And Mike Johnson doesn't want to give them a way to break free. Like, there's a lot of weird things that guy believes and a lot of dangerous stuff he believes. But I think the covenant marriage thing is like an under the radar, holy shit sort of thing that should frighten a lot of people.